You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show. Now that that's squared away, let's start the show. Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. I'm excited to talk with you guys today because I'm talking with Tim Picciott, and he is going to tell us all about financial planning in the crypto space, and he has a CFP license, which I guess is something fancy. We're going to find out. I'm not exactly the greatest with finance stuff, but I'm trying to learn, and that's why we're having him on. He's going to give us a hand. But before we get started, I wanted to make sure that we give a special thank you to our new sponsor, Salt. They're going to be with us for quite a while. I'm really excited because I've actually hung out with the Salt team a bunch of times, and we even did this cool little interview down in Miami. You may actually listen to that on thetatianashow.com. I did an interview with Caleb, who's from the team, but yeah, they're going to be sponsoring the show. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later, but I wanted to welcome our guest. Tim, thank you so much for joining the show.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's funny, actually, I met Caleb on the elevator in Acapulco as he was leaving the conference a little bit early. So I'm looking forward to meeting him as well someday.
Yeah, it's a really neat team over there. I've gotten to hang with them on different occasions, and overall, they have a good vibe. And I was happy to see that they're supporting the show. So it's cool. I think we even gave them a little ad on Proof of Love the other day, so that was fun. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about, because we were introduced by Lynn Ulbricht, and I guess you guys had connected down in Acapulco where we both were as well. So tell me a little bit about your background and how you got interested in all this libertarian stuff, and then, of course, bringing the financial world together with crypto.
Okay, well, thanks. Well, I ended up, I guess the story kind of starts in 2007, 2008, as it probably starts for a lot of people in the crypto space who got in early in 2008. So I graduated in 2008, was studying finance and economics and business. And, I was taught all these different things like, that we couldn't have another financial crisis, and that, we had solved all the problems from the dot-com bubble. And so, here I am graduating in 2008, right before everything is about to hit the fan. And while I was in school, I took a class actually there's kind of two pivotal moments. I took a class on the Federal Reserve. Not because I wasn't into Austrian Economics. I didn't know anything about Ron Paul. I wasn't in the movement. I just wanted to know more about money. And as it turned out, my teammates ended up winning the there's like a Fed challenge, believe it or not, where they indoctrinate all the college students to become, good little Federal Reserve slaves someday. And so my school, believe it or not, ended up actually winning it. But for full disclosure, I wasn't actually on the team because I didn't really care enough at the time. But it was basically all of my classmates except for me. And so I had been taught all this different stuff, like the propaganda version of the Federal Reserve while I was in school, and been taught that all this different stuff that was currently going on in 2008 couldn't happen. And so immediately just had a very big distrust of the system. Then the other thing that was going on in 2007, 2008 is I was actually running my school's endowment fund, particularly the financial section of it. And so again, I didn't know anything about Austrian Economics or Ron Paul or the whole greater movement, I guess, as a whole. But I made the recommendation in late 2007, early 2008 to not buy any financial stocks. And meanwhile, my only job on there was to recommend financial stocks. And so you've got like the dean of the business school saying, hey, Tim, like, I'm not sure, you recognize what your role is over here, but you can't say you don't recommend anything when your entire job is to at least pick out, like, throw us some sort of bone here to recommend something.
Sure.
And so I had veto power on that and stuck to my guns and didn't buy anything. And as a result, and this is early 2008, so before everything ended up crashing. And so the guys that ended up inheriting that fund ended up having the best track record in America that year, because a lot of it was sitting in cash because I was stubborn and wouldn't put it into anything. And I didn't fully know what was going to happen, but it just sort of kind of lucked out that way that things progressed. So then I graduate May 2008, and next thing I know, I'm trying to find a job as a stockbroker, or I guess you would call it more like a stock analyst job is what I wanted to get. But in 2008, it was not a very good time to be trying to find a stock analyst job. And so I took a job as a financial planner, which was basically more of like a sales role. And the first day I started was September 15th, 2008, which was the day Lehman Brothers crashed. And so here I am, like immediately distrusting everything that I was taught in school and trying to reverse engineer the financial crisis and what really went on. And then about a year or two later, I had this chance meeting with a guy who sort of looked like the singer Rob Zombie, like he had his, really long, kind of dreaded out hair. And he's telling me that the Federal Reserve is private. And I'm like, hey man, there's no way this is private. Like, you're full of crap. I've got all these different credentials and, all these different things that I've done in the financial space. I would have known about this. And so long story short, I ended up basically finding out that he was right. So he had told me to, watch the documentary Freedom to Fascism. So I watched that. Then that led me to Creature from Jekyll Island, which then led me to Ron Paul, which then led me to getting hooked up with Freedom's Phoenix and Ernest Hancock, who runs that. Which then, as he started having me on the show more and more, I finally started, kind of listening to the show and hearing all the ads that on LRN.FM that started talking about Bitcoin. And finally, in 2017, or I say early 2017, late 2016, I found out what Ethereum was. And I had known about Bitcoin back when it was $1 and kind of knew all the extreme primitive basics of, hey, this is a way to transact value back and forth. But, I didn't know. I just knew it couldn't really be hacked at the time. It had a very limited understanding. But what I didn't understand was that there was more applications than just the money currency aspect of it. Like, I didn't realize that there was other things that you could do with blockchain technology until I found out about Ethereum. And all of a sudden I'm like, aha, like this is like way more than I thought it was. Like, you could have like the stock market on a blockchain and, have it trade instantaneously and, prevent all this financial fraud that's going on. And so I guess kind of fast forwarding the story a little bit more, it's around August 2017, and Ernest Hancock of Freedom's Phoenix, I'm at a pool party at his house, and there's a few.
I love Ernie. He's
there.
Great.
Yeah, so I'm at his place, and he ends up telling me, hey Tim, we got a bunch of rich crypto guys. Some of them bought it. Basically like the man knows that they have it. Like, let's say they bought it on Coinbase or Kraken, or they're on the grid, so to speak. If someone had millions of dollars and they were looking to cash out some of it, how would they do that without getting nailed in taxes? And so like, it was crazy that like 3 or 4 days later, I ended up having a chance encounter with the guy that basically started what is called like donor advised funds, like before they even had a name. Like, he was the guy that kind of found the loophole in the tax code to do a lot of like advanced charitable giving. And that was just a complete kind of random encounter that I had, like the same week that Ernie, had kind of tasked me with figuring out how to do this. And so that kind of sped things up a little bit. And then it was probably about a month after that, I went to the Nexus Earth conference, and actually I think I'd met you actually we were taking a bus with Ernie down from the hotel to the main conference.
Yep.
But there were so many star-studded people there that I doubt you'd remember me from that. So and actually I met Lynn there as well. I realized, oh, wow, I had all these people there asking me about like, how do you do self-directed IRAs, or how do you get Bitcoin into an IRA? And I'm like,
well wait, hang on one second. Why don't we pause that story for a second, because this might be a good time to talk about our sponsor. I mean, now we're getting into the money stuff. Not that you know anything about Salt, but you might want to check it out. I'm going to encourage my listeners to check it out because they're sponsoring us, and I've been a big fan. So let me tell you a little bit about that real quick, and then we'll get back to the story. Salt is pioneering ways for you to grow your business using your crypto holdings. We've all heard people saying Bitcoin and other digital currencies can't support actual business. Salt is telling those same people to get real. A crypto-backed loan, cash loan from Salt can turn possibility into reality by covering operating costs or funding expansion. Don't let them tell you what your crypto can and can't do for your business. Go to saltlending.com/Tatiana and see for yourself how Salt can help. That's saltlending.com/Tatiana. Thanks for the break. Go on there.
Well, no, actually, that is there are financial planning reasons why you actually want to use something like SALT. And I got to make a disclaimer that I'm not a tax advisor, so go seek your own tax advisor in case, the man ends up listening to this later on. But like, let's say somebody needed $20,000 and they were thinking about selling their crypto. If they were to sell it, then there could be adverse tax effects on there. But if they were to take a loan against it, then the tax implications are actually a lot better from taking a loan. Now, you could run into some risk where if, the price all of a sudden, drops to the floor, then, it wouldn't be, a very good thing to happen. But, there are some tax reasons why you want to consider a loan like SALT provides. So just as a little aside on that, I'm not getting paid to plug it, but, there are some financial planning reasons why you would want to consider SALT. So yeah, so we're at the Nexus Earth Conference 2017. And, I ended up, meeting a bunch of people there. They're asking me about these crypto IRAs. I had never really looked into that before, and basically found out that there was a company out there that was charging 15% up front to do this. And I'm like, well, that's, sort of like highway robbery, in my opinion. So I was like, well, I can probably figure out how to do this cheaper, much more cost effective. And so the next month I'm at another conference, have a chance encounter with a guy who has his own investment firm that specializes in self-directed IRAs and alternative investments. And so, long story short, ended up getting in touch with this guy who was very, very knowledgeable in the space. And so, meanwhile, like, I'm running a investment firm where I've got a few people underneath me, and like finally starting to get some success. I'd left my previous company to start my own deal with a great business partner. But as I'm starting to delve into crypto and realize how powerful it is, then all of a sudden, like, the price starts taking off. So it was about like a week after I talked with this guy, that's like when the price just started going crazy. So I met him in October, and then like the price just starts going nuts through the roof. So here I am trying to work on these estate planning strategies for how you can sell your crypto and not get absolutely hammered through taxes. Because like when people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Mark Zuckerberg said they gave away all their money, like they didn't really give away all their money. And so I was showing them basically the loopholes of what these people are doing and trying to bring that to the crypto space, and also trying to help people out from the retirement aspect of it as well. And so I ended up getting in touch with Jeff Berwick. He had me on Anarchast, and he invited me down to speak at Anarchapulco last year.
What did you talk about?
I talked about crypto IRAs and the different trust strategies of basically how the ultra wealthy are able to legally avoid taxes doing these charitable trusts where they put their money into these trusts, they pay themselves the money. So let's say they take 5% out each year, they pay themselves, they get a huge tax break for putting the money in there. And then the money they pay themselves is then offset by the tax break. And it's just like, if people like knew how it really worked, it would be like a huge probably scandal, but don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, I didn't make up the rules. I'm just telling you like how they do it. And so it's a way for people who bought something with, let's say they bought crypto when it was 50 cents, and all of a sudden they're sitting on like millions of dollars. Well, if they need to pull some of that, and this is a pretty tax advantageous way to do that. If you guys go to thelibertyadvisor.com, so that's sort of like my moniker. I go by the Liberty Advisor. So if you go to thelibertyadvisor.com/Tatiana, I've actually have a giveaway for your audience where I've got the talk from last year and the talk from this year, and then like some other addendums to it that, if they want to get caught up to speed on information they're not going to find anywhere else, and a whole bunch of other stuff as it relates to crypto and the financial planning space that, it would take them years and years and years to kind of figure this stuff out on their own. But if they want to get caught up, they can go to thelibertyadvisor.com/Tatiana, and they will have a link there where they can access this tons of information that's going to be like very, very helpful for them. So I guess where the story then continues is as I'm getting ready to head down to Anarchapulco, the broker dealer I was with, so I was 1099 independent contractor. I wasn't even an employee. They had banned every advisor in America from talking about Bitcoin or speaking on it or recommending it. And this is right as I'm like have already spent all this time setting up these other services for people right before I'm about to head down to Anarchapulco. So then I had to end up making a super, super tough decision and had to actually resign from the firm that I created because the other, the broker dealer that we were with essentially, they were not going to allow me to go down there. They were not going to allow me to do crypto IRAs. They were not going to allow me to do all this trust planning around it. And so I was like, screw you guys, quit. Had to pay a 5-figure fine. Ended up being a big deal. And I was like, okay, well, last time I resigned at like 8 in the morning. By 9 a.m. I was live again. Well, this time they held onto my paperwork for most of last year. And I didn't even, essentially was unemployed for almost the entire year as the state was dragging their feet to approve me. Well, long story short, they finally approved me. Yeah, so they finally approved me. The good news is everyone was getting into crypto IRAs when it was at like 3,500 and not, 19,000. I guess that's the silver lining. But the bad part is all the trust strategies, all the horses had pretty much left the barn on that strategy by the time I was able to actually start implementing it. So it just sort of sucked that I didn't get going on this 6 months earlier or like a year earlier, because I would have been able to help a lot of people basically save a lot of money. And
so what would you say that people should do now? I mean, obviously you can't give people financial advice, but what resources would you suggest and anything like that? Because we're coming up to the end of the show, but I want to maybe give people some sort of a takeaway or some action items.
Yeah, well, I would start with like the link that I mentioned before, that hopefully you guys can have in your show notes at thelibertyadvisor.com/Tatiana. I've got 2 different investor guides. One's on the estate planning aspect. One's on the crypto self-direct aspect. I've got some information about a Roth conversion where all this has to be so nuanced where. That's why I want to, if they just go to the website, they can see just tons of information, because I can't just give like blanket advice, because it's just, very, very, everyone's got different circumstances. But one thing I'm willing to do, and one thing that I did at my Anarchapulco talk was to say, usually, because to set up a self-directed IRA is a ton of work. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to go to Fidelity and press a button and buy a stock. It's like, there's a ton of steps that need to be done. And so I was charging $1,500 to set these up, plus a legal fee. So for anyone that's interested in setting this up, who's one of your listeners, if they want to donate $500 directly to freeross.org and Lynn, and if they want to donate, they'll donate to Ross, and if they want to then spend another $500 with me to set it up, believe me, that's a loss leader. There's not it takes a ton of time to set these up. And then you've got the legal fee. That's usually about $750. So you're getting an incredible deal helping. So I'm calling that the Ross conversion. So we've got the Roth IRA conversion. And
that's awesome.
And so that's one thing that we're doing. And that could really help people out where, because there's different ways where for a lot of people, especially in the libertarian anarchist movement, one of the criticisms they have of this is, why don't I just cash out my 401k? Why don't I cash out my IRA and buy Bitcoin? Well, if you do that, you've got to pay taxes and a penalty. And if you're going to pay taxes and a penalty, you could just convert your IRA to a Roth IRA. You avoid the 10% penalty, and then all of your gains are actually tax-free, whereas legally. And so, and also the structure that we're setting this up, you hold the private key. So there's nothing for the government to come in and confiscate if they try to confiscate IRAs or 401ks, because you hold the private key. So unless you're going to give the government your private key, there's nothing for them to even take. So what I did some math on this, and if somebody January 1st, 2017 cashed out $100,000 out of their IRA, a year later they'd have almost $900,000 in Bitcoin. Well, obviously, past results are not an indication of future performance and all that sort of stuff. And today it'd be a lot less because that was towards the high of the market. Whereas if they would have done a Roth conversion, they would have had a little over $1 million. It was like $1,033,000, and that would have been legally tax-free. And so, to me, giving the government 10% less money by not paying a penalty to them and having a legal tax-free gain versus technically a taxable gain with Bitcoin, to me, I think you can make the case that that would be a libertarian way to go. But anyways, I'm just here, as a resource to people, because everyone's going to have different circumstances, different, needs, different needs. And I'm just here to help people hit their goals the best way possible, because, there's, a lot of different ways to skin a cat, so to speak. And that's, I guess, my spiel on this.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today. Make sure people check out our show notes. You can go to all the links that we referenced on the show today. Thank you one more time to our sponsor, Salt. Also, make sure that you go to proofoflovecast.com and listen to the new show, Proof of Love. Also, make sure to support our friends over at freeross.org. I just saw Lynn not too long ago. I hope to see her again. I think we'll be over at PorkFest. And I hope to be out at the Bitcoin Magazine conference, Bitcoin 2019 conference. It's in San Francisco, June 25th and 26th, I believe. So check your calendars and go check that out. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.